people. And to no surprise, Congress is going right along with him. And the rest of us have to ask, isn't it time we take to the streets? The fascist takeover of Los Angeles was and remains a war against brown people. But now Trump has turned his attention to Washington, D.C. in what is nothing less than a war against black people. Using part of the Home Rule Act, Trump just federalized the D.C. police and is putting 800 National Guardsmen on patrol in the city. He plans on uprooting the homeless and harassing anyone on the streets they deem unworthy. Think this is not just about black people? Listen to what Pam Bondi had to say.
Our secret weapon here in D.C. is U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, one of the toughest prosecutors and a former judge, and she is going to be talking about juvenile crime, how it's out of control here, and what she's going to do to fight back. No more crime rampant in our beautiful capital. No more teenage girls beating a disabled man to death. No more of that. No more drive-bys. We're going to do everything we can.
So first of all, as everyone is pointing out, crime is not rampant in D.C. It's actually been lowered dramatically. But notice the crimes Bondi hand selects: teenage girls assaulting an elderly man, drive-by shootings, and drug overdoses. Ironically, she does not mention the biggest crime in D.C., the storming of the Capitol building. Bondi is doing what Republicans do so well with their base, speaking in racist code. The message is clear. Black people ruin our cities, and so us white people, like Jeanine Pirro, are going to lock them up and throw away the key. Jeanine Pirro, how are we supposed to take that seriously? And Bondi was the follow-up act to Trump, who was making ridiculous lies about why he is compelled to do this, while the networks fact-checked him in real time using graphics. Watch.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged-out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. Just like we did on our southern border.
So fact-checking Trump in real time using graphics, that means two things. First, it means the networks knew this was coming. They had those graphics prepared and on standby because this has been brewing ever since one of Trump's white Doge people got carjacked. With all the lives and careers that little turd wrecked, getting carjacked was less a crime than it was a major act of karma. Second, it means that even though the networks have given up on reporters being able to put Trump in the hot seat and confront him, they are no longer willing to let Trump speak without being contested. It's not much, but it's better than nothing, and it's better than just handing over the platform like they've always done in the past. By invoking the Home Rule Act, though, Trump can only federalize the police for 30 days. And that's when he needs congressional approval. Enter our favorite hayseed from the hill country of Kentucky, James Comer. Comer announced that he plans on holding a hearing. Comer holding a hearing on anything means it's clown show time. Regardless, Comer announced that, alongside President Trump, the House Oversight Committee is also advancing legislative solutions to protect Americans in their capital city. And once again, it's classic Republican racial code. Protecting Americans in their capital is basically saying protect tourists in D.C. from all the scary black people that live there. And so, whatever the president wants to do to round up black people, we're all in. Comer is out to ensure the base that the majority white Republican Congress has no hesitation in taking control away from a black-run city. Well, that black-run city, whose city council has plenty of white people on it, just pushed back. D.C. Ward 6 councilmember Charles Allen called Trump's announcement dangerous and said, the president taking over local control under the guise of public safety is an extreme, outrageous, and dangerous move for our city and for the safety of all our residents. And the entire council issued this statement. This is a manufactured intrusion on local authority. Violent crime in the district is at the lowest rates we've seen in 30 years. Federalizing the Metropolitan Police Department is unwarranted because there is no federal emergency. The problem with both Allen's statement and the full council's statement is they are taking these actions at face value and in a vacuum. They are missing out on calling out this move for what it is, a bald-faced attempt to bump the Epstein story off the front page. Every response to everything Trump does cannot let that pass by. Yes, the city council must push back, but they have to keep the Epstein debacle front and center in their opposition, because Epstein is Trump's kryptonite. But the question that still remains is this: at what point do we take to the streets and confront the fascist authoritarianism taking over this country? Because the day is just around the corner where it's too late. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.
Criminal trial against the Trump administration that starts today, this week, in Judge Breyer's courtroom in San Francisco is just not getting enough attention. It's historic. It's unprecedented. It's the first case against an administration under the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, because the allegations by Governor Newsom against the Trump administration are that by using federal troops on the ground in California for civilian enforcement operations during the protests related to Donald Trump's immigration policy, that wasn't just authorized by the federalization or the commandeering statutes about when a president can commandeer the use of state National Guard. It crossed the line and became a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, for which that is not an exception. You're not going to be confused when I'm done with this hot take. The trial starts this week. I'm going to be doing daily updates about what's happening in the courtroom. There's no jury, only Judge Breyer, the brother of retired Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. And you're on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popak. Let me give you the update. Chomping at the bit to start on this trial. Now, let me back up. A couple of months ago, in June, the California Attorney General brought a case into Judge Breyer, you might have heard of, to stop the Trump administration from taking control and command of the California National Guard. It's their National Guard. There are limited exceptions when the federal government and the commander-in-chief can take control of it to commandeer it. California argued those exceptions were not present. Trump argued that they were, that he needed, among other things, federal troops to help him execute federal law that was being interfered with on the ground by protesters, and that was the argument. Judge Breyer, the trial court judge, after hearing argument and reading the briefs, ruled against the Trump administration originally. Well, actually, he ruled against the Trump administration. And he ruled that what Trump was doing was unconstitutional. He ruled that it was a violation of the 10th Amendment. These are powers reserved to the state. It violated the commandeering statute about when the circumstances that are limited that you can take over a state National Guard. He did not, however, and this is very important for this hot take, he did not rule on the Posse Comitatus Act violation alleged by California. So what went up on appeal to the Ninth Circuit by way of Donald Trump did not have the Posse Comitatus part. It only had the findings that it violated the commandeering statute, Section 1246. That's what went up to the three-judge panel at the Ninth Circuit, which ultimately reversed the injunction issued by Judge Breyer on the commandeering of the National Guard issue only. And it was a three-judge panel, 2 Republicans, 1 Trumper, and a Biden appointee, but 3-0, they said Breyer was wrong on that issue. But they did not discuss the Posse Comitatus because appellate courts can only talk about and address those things that were handled below. If it's not briefed below, if it's not addressed below, the trial judge is in the first position to make a ruling. So that happened. And we said at the time, but the Posse Comitatus Act issue is still present. Okay, let me read to you what the Posse Comitatus Act, currently embodied and memorialized in a U.S. code, 18 U.S.C. 1385, what it provides. Then I'll tell you where it came from, and then I'll tell you what's going to happen at this trial this week. Whoever, except in cases under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, or the Space Force as a posse comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. Came out of an 1878 post-Reconstruction period after the Civil War. It was a way to resolve an election issue where the southern states of the former Confederacy were worried and continued to be worried that the Union, well, now the Union had been put back together again, but that the northern troops, the federal troops, would forever be present in their communities enforcing the law, and they did not want that. So Congress said, all right, we'll appease you in this area. We'll assure you that federal troops will not be used on domestic soil for law enforcement purposes. And they set up this fine and imprisonment function. It's never been tested before. It's from 1878. No president has ever tried to violate the Posse Comitatus Act. Question is, it runs up, as you can see, against a couple of interesting doctrines. The war powers of a commander-in-chief, the fact that a appellate court has already ruled that he's allowed to commandeer the National Guard, but that's a separate issue for whether he can use the U.S. military troops along with the National Guard. And then 3, the immunity decision, the criminal immunity decision that the United States Supreme Court granted all presidents, mainly Trump, if he violates a criminal code while he's in office. So that's what's happening this week, because what Judge Breyer said is, I want evidence. I don't want to rule on this in a preliminary injunction setting. I want a trial. And he set that back in June. That would happen this week in August. And here we are. 3-day trial on one side, the California State Attorney General. I'm going to be speaking to the actual Attorney General, Rob Bonta, this week about this case and other matters here on Legal AF. Keep an eye out for that. And on the other side, the Trump administration. One of their lawyers. They're running out of lawyers, but it'll be one of their lawyers. I don't think they'll trot out somebody like John Sauer, who's the Solicitor General. I think they'll save him for the appeal. They'll trot out some other senior trial lawyer. And what the judge wants to hear is evidence of the violation, the use of the military on domestic soil as a posse comitatus. There's been briefing that led into this. I've read through the briefing. I don't think ultimately the U.S. government did a very good job at arguing that they did not violate it. Their primary argument is, we can't violate it. We're the commander-in-chief. And using the National Guard and commandeering the National Guard provides the exception. And the judge said, no, he denied their motion to dismiss. He says, no, we're going to trial. I want to hear evidence. Show me pictures, show me evidence. And there is plenty of evidence of people being arrested, protesters being arrested by the Marines, in handcuffs, detained and arrested. That's not what they are supposed to be doing on domestic soil. They want to set up a perimeter around buildings and let the law enforcement or National Guard handle the rest. That's a different story. But actually doing something affirmatively to make arrests or take down people, that's not the kind of United States that you and I want to live in. Just like the Confederacy states didn't want federal troops on the ground either. And so 3 days of testimony, 3 days of evidence. I'm sure most of what Donald Trump's team is going to argue is illegal doctrines. Most of what the California team is going to argue is a lot of evidence and facts to make a record. The judge is then going to rule. I'm not sure he's going to rule from the bench. There's no jury here at the end of the 3rd day. But sometime in the next week, he's going to issue a ruling. Usually judges that are handling bench trials already have their clerks drafting orders, opinions that they're going to issue, subject to whatever they hear at the trial. So it won't be that far after that. And then if he rules against the Trump administration, there's going to be another appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I think it goes to the same 3-judge panel. We'll have to see if that actually happens. The 3-judge panel was not great for California the first time around on these particular issues. Bennett, Miller, and Sung. But we'll have to see with the Posse Comitatus Act if the facts and the law change matters. Once there's a ruling at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the loser is going to take a Supreme Court either emergency appeal or a regular docket appeal that'll end up sometime in the last quarter of 2025, first quarter of 2026. But it sort of got lost in the shuffle. This first trial against the Trump administration, criminal at that, about the Posse Comitatus Act sort of went under the radar, but don't let it be under the radar here on Midas Touch. We'll follow it here and come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Hit the free subscribe button there as well. I curate that channel. I'm the managing editor of that channel. We got about a dozen contributors. We do about 10 videos every day at the intersection of law and politics. And some combination of me, the other contributors, Adam Klasfeld, who runs All Rise News, just joined us to do regular video contributions. He's following every minute, every hour of the trial, and we'll rely on a lot of his reporting as well. And then, as I said, Rob Bonta, Attorney General for California, is going to be joining Legal AF and me for an interview sometime the early part of this week. So, come over, subscribe, hit the reminders. Everything's for free. It's the way to support our channel. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak.
Y'all have been voting Republican your whole life because they keep telling you let them get their hands on it, they're going to fix it, and you ain't going to be poor no more. And look at you, still fucking poor. So let me break this shit down for you in a dialect you will understand, and then you can no longer tell anybody you are confused as to how this works. Now, I'm going to use a timeline that anybody around my age should be able to relate to, so take out your crayons and let's follow along. Obama comes into office. He inherits Bush's economy. It is shit, and he spends the next 4 years trying to fix it. Old Cheeto Benito wins the election. He inherits a good economy. He spends the next 3 fucking years trying to unravel everything that Obama did, and then the shutdown happens and the whole goddamn world's economy goes in the tank. Cheeto Benito does a horrible job trying to manage this. Old Sleepy Joe wins the election. All of a sudden, everything starts being really expensive. All you motherfuckers start bitching. You do not understand that we are now facing the fruits of Cheeto Benito.
We want to say we always want to get better. And there are ways more than any other city in America that the federal government can help the District of Columbia. Our city is unique. Our prosecutor is a federal prosecutor. Our judges are appointed by the President of the United States. And by the way, we have 15 vacancies in the Superior Court, which we need to go down to the Congress for approval. We have 2 vacancies in the Court of Appeals, which we need to go down. So anytime you have a backlog in the courts, you have delayed justice and people are less safe. Our council has also worked cooperatively with me to change our local laws to hold people accountable. And one of the best pieces that we have moved has allowed us to hold violent offenders, people who use guns, to hold them pre-trial. And since we moved that emergency in 2023, we've seen shootings and homicides precipitously drop. So we know we're holding the right people and holding the right people accountable. There's more to do. We need judges. You heard Jeanine Pirro says she needs prosecutors, and we need police in D.C. I'd like to hire 500 great people over the course of the next several years to get our numbers where they need to be. And D.C. is hiring. So if you're interested in policing in the best city in the world, please reach out to us.
Mayor Bowser, you talked about how the National Guard in D.C. is the president's National Guard. You talked about the possibility that he could send them out into the streets of D.C. That would seem to be quite provocative and disruptive to the people who live there. How provocative would that be if the president did indeed send in the National Guard?
Well, I'm concerned about that for this reason. I have the ability to call on the National Guard by making a request to the Department of Defense. And they're not law enforcement officials. These are men and women who leave their families to serve our country. And that is just not their primary role, to enforce local laws. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about them not being used used efficiently. And I just think that's not the most efficient use of our Guard. But as I said, that's the president's call about how to deploy the Guard. And you are right to be concerned about just the presence of being provocative in communities, sometimes communities that can feel harassed and attacked. And my message to our constituents is all officials, whether they're Guard or other federal officials, have to act in a constitutional way. And residents have rights, and everybody has to follow the law. But that's always our message. Everybody has to follow. Everybody has to follow the law. And so in D.C., for example, all of our police have body-worn camera. It's accountability on the side of law enforcement and for the community. And so to the extent that officials are coming to the city that aren't following the types of protocols that we have, I'd be concerned about the exposure for the federal government or any of those agencies.
Madam Mayor, two-part question for you. One, how concerned are you that tomorrow the president could announce that he's taking over the Metropolitan Police Department? Is that something he could do?
There are very specific things in our law that would allow the president to have more control over our police department. None of those conditions exist in our city right now. As I mentioned, we are not experiencing a spike in crime. In fact, we're watching our crime numbers go down. In fact, the July before this very unfortunate incident with this young man occurred that seems to spurred all of this action. We had one of the lowest crime levels and shootings that we've had in a July in recent history. So not only are we going down year to year, we're seeing the trends go in the right way in every crime category, by the way. Carjacking have been our most concerning group of crimes since 2023, and we've seen a 50% drop since 2023. And this year, we're also seeing that decline.
And Madam Mayor, a final question for you. You, in this entire interview, you have put out the facts. We have put the facts on the screen. How do you convince the President of the United States that what you have been saying is right, true, and fair?
Listen, what our focus with the president has been is to focus on shared priorities. Even in that clip you played, he talked about making D.C. the most beautiful city. So his task force has been focused on federal properties, which they could have been focused on all along. Cutting the grass, fixing the fountains, fixing the streetlights. All of that is helpful to us, and we will work on that. I have believed for a long time that Trump had a view that when he left the White House the last time at the height of COVID, he had a lot of concerns about homelessness, as did we. Those conditions simply don't exist now. So we're going to keep talking to the president, working with his people on the issues that are high priority for him. Now, if the priority is to show force in an American city, we know he can do that here. But it won't be because there's a spike in crime.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to get in trouble with our control room. But really quickly, one of the things that we have seen over and over from the president, from his team, Stephen Miller saying it's like Baghdad in Ethiopia. They seem to hold their harshest criticism sometimes for cities that are majority black and brown. Do you see that, and what do you think that means?
I think that I have been dealing kind of with this issue for a number of years. It's kind of easy fodder on the campaign trail. But now we're talking about governing, and my job is to focus on making sure our city is running well, and people enjoy a great quality of life. And I think we're doing a really good job. We do need the federal government's help, as I mentioned, because they have an outsized influence on our criminal justice system. We need more prosecutors. We need more more judges. There are other ways to help. Even we want to rebuild our jail, and there are ways that the feds can help with that. But also just doing their part, cutting the grass, fixing the fountains, making sure that federal law enforcement is doing all of the policing that they can do. And I just have to say thank you to MPS, FBI, ATF, who've always worked cooperatively with us, and we expect that they will again.
Mayor Muriel Bowser of the great city of Washington, D.C., thank you very much for coming to the weekend.
Thank you.